Welcome to Power of the Tribe podcast. I'm your host, John Connors. I'm also the founder and head instructor of Connors Martial Arts. We teach Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Muay Thai, kickboxing, and mixed martial arts. And it's October 29th, 2020. We're here in the Boston area, covered in snow, and I'm with my co-host, Dan Robin. How you doing, Dan?
Good, John. How you doing?
Good. You know, I woke up today, and yesterday it was beautiful around my house. The leaves were turned, and it was pretty, beautiful, and then a little snow came out. I kind of like it.
Yeah.
But it kind of went from fall to winter pretty quick. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not thrilled about the snow, but
Yeah.
I think we've talked about this, that people up here seem to never, ever get used to the fact that they're in the Northeast. Like every single winter, people will be like, can you believe this? I'm like, yeah. You know why I can believe it? Because every winter's like this.
Pretty much. Sometimes it's
like
really mild. It's been mild lately, yeah.
I feel like that's like neighbor talk. Like when my neighbors, they'll just be like, can you believe the snow? I'm like, yeah.
Yeah. And you know what?
Every single winter.
I've never missed a day on the roads, even when I've had shit boxes, rear-wheel drive.
Yeah. Skidding all over the roads.
Exactly. If you know what you're doing, you can figure it out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't really. And that's the other thing. Like people stocking up. There's like blizzard. We better stock up. And I'm like, has a store ever been closed because of weather for more than an hour? You know what I mean?
Well, Dan, I was thinking about that because they're pumping up like, oh, case rates are up for COVID, and we're going to have a second wave now. And I'm like, really? Am I going to have to go out and buy a bunch of toilet paper?
Is that going to happen again?
Is that going to happen again? Because I was not one of the toilet paper hoarders, and I was looking at some empty shelves for a couple of weeks, and it got a little scary in my house.
Hoard this time?
Yeah. No, I don't want to. I'm still annoyed at the people who bought excessive toilet paper. It's kind of
such
obnoxious.
a weird thing.
Yeah.
It's like you don't want to stock up on food.
Right.
Because I remember, if you remember in March, going, like when the first panic, I remember going into Whole Foods and there were people buying, like one person came by with like a shopping cart over their head with like hundreds of bottled water. Hundreds and hundreds, and like in a panic. And I'm like, what? You understand the pandemic doesn't mean you don't have water.
So weird.
You know,
right?
like it still comes out of the tap. This isn't like a nuclear winter or like a pestilence in the water supply.
It's a little obnoxious too.
Yeah, exactly.
Over purchasing.
All these people buying hundreds of rolls of toilet paper. It's like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Just calm down. You know that I'm immune to it though. I've got the
Japanese robotic toilet.
Toilet that.
I think you were called out for hoarding alcohol, if I remember right, when you went to the liquor store.
That's right. That's right. Wait, that actually happened.
Yeah.
And it was just my regular purchase.
It was your regular pre-COVID purchase.
It's not a great sign when they call you out for hoarding and you're like, no, that's just what I'm going to do. I told you that my standard thing that makes me feel bad is if I'm in the liquor store and the guy just casually says, you know, I just put my my purchase on the counter and he's like, oh, having a big party? Like, no.
You want some help to the car with all of this?
Like, I'm not having a party. It's just for me.
Well, Dan, I ended up enjoying a particular tequila, Don Julio 70, and apparently I've drank it dry because I can't find it anywhere anymore.
You've cleared out the area?
I imagine the alcohol sales are through the roof from this lockdown. It seems that way, right?
At least at first, yeah.
I think it still feels that way to me. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
But you're right. Maybe I need to buy at 2 liquor stores, you know, half at each so I don't get accused of hoarding this time. For those who missed it, that was a real thing that happened to me. Like a guy, I just bought my booze and he was like, well, there's people like, I said, how's business?
You said,
That's what it was. How's
set
business?
it up right there. So you just go, you get your purchases, you go up to the front of the line and you're just being a model citizen, good neighbor, and you say, how's it going?
How's business? With
neighbor?
Because of COVID, I go, is your business being hurt at all? And he's like, well, there's people like you who come in and buy all these bottles, and then people come in and they just want one, and it's all sold out because people like you bought all the bottles. And I'm like, what the? I just stand like, what the hell? Like, do you want me to put it back? I can put it back.
Crazy, man. I love that story.
I said I had this temptation to be like, you know what? I'll help you out. Keep it. I'll buy at the liquor store across the parking lot. Like, keep it. But I didn't.
But
I
you
was
didn't.
like,
Yeah.
forget it.
You're like,
just
I'm
gonna-
an alcoholic.
Yeah.
Whatever.
I'll just buy it. People are crazy.
So crazy. All right. So next month, I'm going to the Pans again. No-gi Pans, Dan. Did I tell you this already?
No.
Yeah. So Rory and Maria and I are going.
Right back down. Is it the
right
same
after.
place?
This is in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah. And I think I'm going to compete, get this, in the ultra heavyweight. Because they didn't have any in my weight class. So I'm going up to the big boys, the dinosaurs.
So not even heavyweight.
Not even heavyweight,
is-
Dan.
is
It's not
this
even
basically-
super heavyweight. They're called ultra heavyweight. So it's
So
basically
there could be someone.
700
weight,
pounds.
any weight.
Exactly. Yeah.
Do you get to know?
Yeah, I
who's
think.
it? Do you
yeah.
already know? Who's
Yeah.
signing up?
One of the guys is like a 20-time world champion. He
Oh.
wins. He's won everything forever. Yeah.
So that's going to be tough.
That's going to be tough.
And is he bigger than you?
Yeah, yeah, he's ultra heavyweight.
Oh,
I think it's like over 230 or something. So yeah, he's probably like 300 pounds or something. Yeah,
you just said hell with it. I'll do it.
I said the hell with it. Yeah, I'm going to do it. Yeah,
You get this. Is a recipe for injury, isn't it?
absolutely.
Just
This is
checking.
a recipe
That's
for
what I thought.
disaster. Yeah, I'll probably get smashed. Yeah,
You're gonna come back all mangled.
yeah, I'll be a stain on the mat. Probably.
Well, you know what? You keep winning these tournaments, and you were saying one thing to explore is finally coming up against someone that gets the better of you,
That's it.
and
Yeah.
see how that,
Right.
what you learn, and how you feel, and what you learn about yourself, and what you learn about your jiu-jitsu, right?
Exactly, Dan. Dan, the watchword of the year for me is development. It's all about development. I'm going to find a way to glean some development out of this experience. That's all that matters.
And the flip side of that is almost a theme, I'd say, which is for jiu-jitsu development, which is putting your ego aside and being, not feeling like
Yeah.
a loss is
Not afraid to
something
lose
that's-
status.
Right.
Yeah, that's my personal theme
Yeah.
is I'm trying to not fear to lose status. And it's tricky because it's our nature to fear that. So, but I think if I can do it, my life is going to be better. So that's what I'm working on.
Well, you have to employ a different strategy against someone that's very
Yeah,
big.
definitely, Dan. Yeah, yeah. And I'm working that out now. Yeah, and also jiu-jitsu performance related. Our team just competed at Grappling Industries in Derry, New Hampshire, and they
Right.
did excellent. We had 11 competitors, and we actually, when the tally settled in, we had the best team performance. We were the number one team, and we had we had 45 wins and 15 losses. So I'm bragging about our team, but it's about those guys. They prepared really well, and they executed. They performed amazing.
If I remember correctly, so it was 45 wins and 15 losses.
Yeah.
But, and then there was a team that was ranked number one for most wins, but it was something like 48 wins and then 30 losses, or something.
I don't even know. Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
they
yeah.
had like a couple more wins, but then
Actually, when the
twice
final
to
tally
three
came, I'm
times
not
the
even
number
sure
of
if they
losses.
had more wins. But yeah, you're right. They had more competitors. Yeah, we had a better record. We had more gold medals. Yeah, we did great. Yeah, very happy for these guys. Very proud of them. They did awesome.
congratulations
And
to
and
you
we,
and the team.
I pounded in their head. It's about development. So some of them were white belts. We're not here to win white belt tournaments. You're here to win eventually black belt tournaments, and this is just a part of the process. Let's use this as part of our development.
And again, so if you didn't do well, or you underperformed, or you lost, you just
Yeah, and
Moving along.
everyone performed to their ability. It was super impressive. Very happy. Yeah. Yeah. Awesome.
So this idea of getting your head in the right space to compete that
Yeah.
we've talked about quite a bit.
Right.
There was a video that you sent me
Okay.
that was the Gracie brothers, right?
Gracie Brothers. Yeah.
And they
They make great videos.
right, and they had a video that the idea was how to compete. I think it said how to compete until you're 95 years old or something like that.
Awesome.
And the idea
And their grandfather basically
Yeah,
did that.
did,
Helio. Yeah.
So the idea is what they were talking right from the start. They say, why do people quit?
Why did they quit jiu-jitsu?
Yeah. And they
Okay.
said, they own a school and they've seen many, many people quit,
Yeah.
as anyone who runs any school.
Yeah.
And so he said it was, here are the 5 rules to roll till you're 95. Maybe that's the name of the video.
Yeah, that's it.
5
Five
rules.
rules to roll till you're 95.
Right. And I'm going to do a spoiler ahead of time,
Okay.
which is to keep your head around this, that I think all the rules actually come back to what we keep talking about thinking about development and not falling into an ego trap. And they're worded differently, and there's different examples, and we can go over them. But
Dan, I think,
but they all come back to that.
I think we may, when we finally get this cult off the ground, it's going to be about development. It's going to be the key word. It solves everything. When you're focused on developing yourself, you just can't lose, and it puts your head in the right place, and improves your performance. Everything is better. Yeah.
So again, that's my spoiler. That I think that was underlying all 5 of these points.
Okay.
Like they're like, we have 5 rules, but to me, it's
well,
only 1 rule.
All right, let's hear them. And be forewarned, as a cult leader, I'm going to have very strong opinions about this. I may disagree with them. I may violently disagree.
You never know.
You never know. But I might. They're pretty smart guys. I probably agree.
So
with
this
them.
is. I always remember Henner and Huron. Gracie?
Yeah. Yeah.
I think so. So
yeah.
And all right. So I'll just start. I'll go through the rules.
Let's go through them. We'll
in
chat
my
about them.
Extensive preparation, as you know.
You're the man.
Ready. So the first one, I don't remember the name of the rule, but the idea was this: there was a name to the rule, but it was like the name of one of their students, and this was the idea.
Okay.
It was like respect thee, and then their student's name. Belt
Steve Murphy or something.
Steve, the Murphy belts or something like that. And what they meant was they had a student who was like 65 years old, black belt. And he came in to one of the instructors and said, like really down, and was like, this guy's a blue belt and I couldn't tap him. Like we had a stalemate. And he felt really awful. And the instructors, the Gracies, knew that blue belt, and they were like, he's 20-something years old, he's athletic, and he weighs 40 pounds more than this guy. And this guy had in his head, like, I'm a black belt, so why can't I beat this blue belt?
Interesting.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so they were saying, so you might have heard this. I've heard some version of this around the gym too.
Yeah.
Which is, well, the principle is this, that these things actually matter in any fight, whether it's jiu-jitsu or defending yourself on the street or any sort of physical confrontation. Size, age, weight, experience, of course, strength, these things matter.
Yeah, explosiveness, athleticism.
Right. So some people have this
balance, agility.
Even people that have done jiu-jitsu a while.
Aggression.
Right. All these things.
Yeah.
Have, and then luck, even something, like how it happens to go, you know?
Definitely.
And even people that are experienced in jiu-jitsu sometimes maintain this idea that they're like, isn't jiu-jitsu an art for overcoming a bit larger opponent?
Yeah.
And so why it shouldn't matter. And it's
and that's a great point.
It's not saying it doesn't matter.
They basically that was a ham-handed sales pitch. You know, Royce Gracie is this 170-pound guy, and he's beating these Goliaths. Right. Yeah, and we're like, this is magic. It's a miracle, and it did excite everybody, and it did capture all our imaginations and fired up our enthusiasm. And there is something to it, But
to say size doesn't matter.
It's ridiculous. Yeah.
I remember a long time ago hearing a conversation with, again, a good jiu-jitsu player who was saying, I think they asked you, it was a long time ago, it's vague to me, but they were saying, so if you had 2 people of equal jiu-jitsu skill and one's much bigger than the other one, would there be a difference? And it was like, I think you had to sort of gently be like, well, I think the bigger guy would have an advantage if they had equal skill, but one was significantly bigger. Yeah. Like
math is pretty straightforward there. Yeah.
That's not too tricky. Not a lot of variables in there.
Not a lot of calculus. That's pretty much arithmetic.
So some people, though, do have this fantasy of like, it's all jiu-jitsu, none of that matters. But I think anyone that rolls, and if you're thinking clearly, you know that if someone is much more athletic and stronger or younger or more in shape, it's hard.
Then it's all physics. You know, I was doing a private lesson with a couple of my students, Chad Lightfoot, Alex Carrentis, great guys, great students. And they're kind of big, burly guys. I don't know where Chad's weighing in now, at least 230. Alex lost some weight. I think he's down to 220. He's doing great. But that's pretty big guys, right? Yeah. And guess what? If you want to move somebody that's 230 pounds, if you want to sweep them, you need a certain amount of momentum. Like you can't.
There's physics involved.
Yeah. The whole thing is physics.
Yeah.
So there's levers, different, your arms and your femurs and your humerus bones. There are certain levers. and your shin bone is a lever, and there's acceleration, and there's mass, and it's goddamn physics. So if the guy's 230 pounds, and that 230 pounds is sitting there on the mat and it's not moving, and you want to flip it over onto its back, that requires a significant amount of force. Yeah. And if the guy was 130 pounds, yeah, it requires a lot less force. So, yeah, of course it matters a lot.
And what I always say to this is that people always miss this, where they're sort of like, well, even after however many years of training, I bet you still would have trouble like with this, whatever big college football player or something like that. And it's like, what I always think people are missing is, well, what would be my chances against that football player if I didn't do jiu-jitsu? Do you know what I mean? Like, that's what you're missing. Like, it's like,
yeah,
why would I have any chance? I'd have nothing on him.
If you have no training and the guy outweighs you by 15 pounds, he kicks your ass.
Right.
Not 50 pounds. Just 15 pounds.
Yeah. It's like don't lose sight of it's amazing that you're even having the conversation.
Exactly.
Like all of a sudden your mindset shifts to like, I had a lot of trouble with this. He was only a white belt, but he was like 250 and 25 years old and muscle bound.
Right.
And I had trouble with him. It's like, well, he had trouble with you too.
Yeah.
And he should have demolished you. Do you know what I mean? Like,
well, it's interesting, Dan, that I've been thinking about this exact thing about size, not because I'm going to go into the ultra heavyweight, but that's important as well. But just teaching guys, and makes a big. Your strategy is going to vary. If 230-pound guys are going at each other, they're going to have a different strategy than 230-pound guys. And for jiu-jitsu in general, you need momentum. So momentum requires a movement. So I have to start moving myself and get my opponent moving so I can create potential momentum that I can add to and capitalize on. You know what I mean? So it's even more important when they're bigger people. And it might sound simplistic the way I'm describing it now, but it's not obvious to people. They think, oh, I'm going to learn these techniques, and I'm just going to do the technique. I'm going to do a scissor sweep. I'm going to do a butterfly sweep. And if the guy's bigger and he kind of knows what he's doing, it's going to be hard to just do it. You know what I mean? You got to you basically, against better people, you got to do 5 things to them until the 6th thing works.
right.
Because you're creating off balancing, you're getting them out of position, you're moving into the position of fulcrum, you're creating so much movement and so much momentum that now you have the force required to turn them or do whatever you need to do. So movement is really important in jiu-jitsu and like multiple attacks,
Right. And I've heard many times too, going against someone larger, sometimes you want to move yourself and not them, right?
Yeah.
Like if they're too big, you're just thinking about getting yourself away or moving around them or getting to their back or,
But you want to get them moving too, because there's the potential for momentum. If they're not moving at all, then you're going to have to just get around them and get on top of them, I guess. And then when you're moving around them, they'll move to stop that. And now you got some movement and some potential momentum. So I'm curious. So what else did they say about that rule, whatever they called it, the Murphy Belt rule or whatever?
Well, here's something that I personally like. So this is what I've heard around the gyms where they said every 20 pounds is like a belt.
Okay.
And they said every 10 years is like a belt.
Okay.
So to me, that's just sort of a very broad rule. Like I also thought of 2 things. I'm like, so when Jesse Gutierrez taps me out and I'm the one who's got 40 pounds on him.
Right. And
like
you're like a negative blue belt or something.
Exactly. Like what just happened. But then I also think it seems a little silly. So if I go up against a 25-year-old that weighs 20 pounds more than me, I'm like, oh, so he should be 7 belts ahead of me or something. It sort of gets a little silly sometimes where I'm like, well,
I'll tell you right now.
It's just a very rough.
I'll tell you something, Dan. When you brought this up, and I've heard of it in the past, because I listen to their videos. They're really excellent educators, and they're great jiu-jitsu guys and great ambassadors and advocates of jiu-jitsu. But right as I sit here today, I would say, you know what? Don't even go down this goddamn road of thinking where you're coming up with some calculus. Add 20, subtract 3 years, put another belt and a half on here.
I'm 1 belt ahead of you.
And, you know what? It's all bullshit. The whole thing is, if you're I'm going to go right back to it, Dan. I'm going to bore you and our listeners. If you're focused on your development and you're a 65-year-old black belt, then when you're in there in the academy, just get goddamn better. And you're like, oh, I had trouble with the 250-pound blue belt. Yeah, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Did you get any better? What did you learn? How did you improve? That's why you're there. You're not there to get over on 250-pound blue belts. You're there to develop yourself, whatever that means. And it could be a 65-year-old white belt, 65-year-old black belt. I don't know. And you know what? All black belts aren't the same. Development for every individual is going to be different. So you have your individual position, and you need to develop yourself. You got to find a way to develop. I don't know what it's going to be. Maybe you just improve the grip where you're doing an arm drag. It's like my grip is a little bit better now. Like I didn't get to the guy's back, but I almost did this time. Great. Then now you've developed. You have a better arm drag. But this whole tack is a disaster. Adding, subtracting.
Right. See, I like the idea of bear in mind, don't beat yourself up for performance. Like in that side of it, like don't beat yourself up because you didn't do as well as you thought against someone, which is in line with why are you beating yourself up over something? Just learn and just progress.
Just develop
so I like
yourself.
that idea, but right. But then like when it gets to the calculation, like 20 pounds.
Yeah, that's why this whole belt thing is
I'm
bullshit. It's like, let's say, Dan, I can sweep somebody with a certain sweep, and all of a sudden the guy's 260 pounds. And like, whoa, it's way harder to sweep the guy. Okay, then what are we going to do? You're either going to have to perfect that sweep. You're going to have to find a way to access more leverage. That might be require me to off-balance him a little bit more. It might require me to use some additional movement so I can create more momentum. It might require me to get into the position of fulcrum even stronger to make it happen. Or you know what? I don't do that goddamn sweep because it doesn't work when they're 260 pounds. Maybe I have to do a different sweep. Maybe I have to get to a single leg X and an Ashe Garami, get completely underneath the guy to find the sweep. So if you're asking yourself those questions, you end up developing. When you're like, how come I can't beat a 250-pound blue belt? I'm a black belt. That is just a waste of thinking. You're totally focusing on the wrong thing.
Right.
I was training with Big Tyler the other day, and so he's 6'5.5", supposedly, or something, and like 250 pounds or something. And what did I do to him? Oh, I did like kind of an arm drag thing. And guess what, Dan? With everybody, I go, bam. Next thing you know, I'm on their back, right? Mm-hmm. But I'm this short little guy. I do it, bam. I go to get on his back. He's stepping over my head like Brontosaurus. And like, I'm like, so what do? Do I subtract 10 years and add this?
Technically.
And I'm really a blue belt and he's a purple belt. No, I'm like, well, I got to do something different. And what I ended up doing was like going back underneath him and sweeping the other way. Yeah, you got to figure out the problem. Focus on developing yourself. Focus on solving problems. Don't focus on this baloney calculus about belts and whatever it is.
Well, let me ask you this, like a side, because you also hear this. People, I think, hard in the right place, but I'm as we're sitting here, I'm thinking of a new way of looking at it, where people say, forget belts, like forget, right, but. I would say, like, forget, like, it's just who even cares about who's blue, who's purple.
Yes.
I would say that's true for rolling and for everything we keep talking about, like just developing yourself.
Okay.
But couldn't you still not devalue your own belt? You could say it was a acknowledgement or reward I got from my instructor for a certain amount of skill, a certain amount of, like, so instead of like, I don't care at all about belts. I don't care if it's sort of like, I'm not using it as a method of comparison, but I still appreciate the belt because I still feel like I got, I still feel good.
Here's my take on belts, Dan.
Yeah.
I believe the primary purpose of the belt is to help the student in development. So if I give somebody a belt and it's going to help them on their path to develop, that's the most important reason why. Okay. What's the secondary reason? Well, to recognize them for the effort that they put in and the level of development that they have attained so far. Like, congratulations, man, you've come this far. Here's your blue belt. Good for you. Good on you. And then, they feel good about it, and that's motivating as well. But the first thing is to help them in their development. So
have you moved completely away from this idea, because you hear this a lot, which is like, I want to get my purple belt when I can beat every blue belt. I want to get my brown belt when I can beat every purple belt. I don't want to get my black when I can beat every
I think
brown belt.
an individual could have that perspective, which is great, but I don't look at that way. I really look at every individual and see what do they need, what belt do they need right now, and
Yeah, and I guess
Yeah.
those aren't incompatible. If someone that motivates them
Not
and that's what they want to
necessarily.
do,
Yeah.
and that's how they want to get to the next belt,
Yeah.
then fine, right?
Yeah, and then a certain percentage of people are going to feel like, oh, Jesus, he just gave me my purple belt. I'm not good enough to be purple belt, and they feel stressed out about it. But so what? Maybe that helps their development as well, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe somebody's resenting it. I'm like, I should have been promoted a long time ago. But maybe that helps their development.
Right.
So every individual has a different personality, different psychological makeup. And that's the way I look at it. Dan, I'm so happy, you know, with the culture in our gym right now. You know, it's still, you know, we're in lockdown, so there's some limitations on our training. But you know what I notice now is guys are really focused on their development, just like I'm preaching all the time. Sometimes I have white belts and black belts in their training with each other. Could be situational training, like, you know, half guard or mount or something. And you know what? They're both going at each other. And what I love about it is the black belt isn't saying, why am I not demolishing this white belt?
Right.
The black belt's trying to get better. And the white belt's trying to get better. And man, that I am so happy. I'm so proud of that. That's the culture we want, where all of this baloney about your status and how is this role affecting my perceived status among other people is just dropped away, and people are zeroed in on development. You can only focus on one thing. You know, the word priority, there can only be one priority. And if you make a development, man, you make your life so much easier. You don't have this question. You're not going to Henner and Huron going, how come this guy's beating me up, or I can't get over on him? That shouldn't even be a question. And, you know, good on them. They found a way to assuage this guy's anxieties or insecurities and make him feel better and keep training and developing himself. But I think a better answer, you know, I didn't have this answer all the time. So these guys probably recorded that video years ago. So I'm not criticizing them, but the better answer is, that's not. You shouldn't even be thinking about that. You should be thinking of how can you get better, whatever that means. How can you develop yourself?
Yeah.
That answers everything, and we got that going on at the academy, and I'm so happy. Oh, so Big Tyler, we get these two big white belts, Joe Munro and Kevin Malloy, and they just smoked the last tournament. So they beat Joe, edged out Kevin, I think, on points because they were in the same bracket. And then they smoked everybody else at the tournament. It was
Nice.
awesome to watch them. And guess what? They get in there with Tyler, and they're just locking horns, the three of those guys, banging it away. And it's going to make Tyler better, and it's making them better. And they're white belts. They're going to get their blue belts, like, probably next week. But, you know, they can give enough a look at Tyler that he has to develop himself, too. And they're big boys, so it's so awesome to watch. And nobody's getting bent out of shape. Tyler isn't, like, massaging the situation, saying like, "All right, I kind of let you pass there." There's none of that nonsense happening that
Right.
you know happens, right?
Yeah.
With when upper belts or with lower belts, they don't want to feel bad if something doesn't go their way, so they may like start pretending they're not really trying all of a sudden. There's none of that. They're all trying hard. Because, I mean, Tyler's the most game person you're ever going to meet.
Yeah.
He can't help but try his hardest. That's the way he rolls, and good for him. And that's why has got to his level and developed so good. And these guys are doing the same thing. And for me, it's awesome to watch.
And then
Last week, we were doing side control, and I got in the bottom of side control with those two beefaloes, and we just went at it. And I was getting ready for the tournament. And guess what, Dan? Size matters. Like,
Yeah.
I got out of side control, but believe you me, it was a hell of a lot harder than it would have been otherwise. With the gi on and everything, I was like, oh, I'm like, you don't need to lift weights when you get 240, 280 or whatever pounds on you in the bottom of side control, and you got to find your way out of that, man. My whole neck got to work out. My shoulders, muscles like from my nose down through my throat were throbbing. I'm like, I didn't know there was a muscle that went there. But you find that out when you do jiu-jitsu,
and you're
right?
under a guy that big. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and they know what they're doing. They're good.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I wasn't complaining. I wasn't going, 57 black belts, subtract the 2, add the
Right,
3. That's why it took me
You should
3
be better
minutes
than
to
me,
get out of
You should
there.
actually be better than
Yeah,
me.
yeah. I didn't have to do any of that baloney. I just like, wow, that was hard to get out. God bless that I did get out. And how did I do it? What should I do next time? The big lesson I learned, Dan, is don't let those guys get you in a side control. But we were starting there. But yeah, just develop yourself.
As a sort of a side, same point, but maybe broader, it's great that, so there's this culture developed in the academy, but it's a great sort of idea of the people in the academy thinking about that they're contributing to the culture of the academy.
Yeah.
Because most people don't think that. I didn't think that when I was doing, it wasn't like, am I helping this, what you were calling an ecosystem?
Yeah.
Or what? I read some quote, it's like, what's bad for the hive is bad for the bee or something like that, like from ancient Rome. And it was like, if people are thinking a lot, because a lot of people aren't, you're sort of not thinking, is this destructive to
there's such power in thinking that way, Dan, because whenever we think beyond ourselves, it takes the pressure off of you. You feel more purpose in your life because you're doing something beyond yourself. It's very effective. Yeah, definitely. And it's really starting to happen in our academy, and I'm so happy, and I realize it's the most important thing. And although we have fewer students than we did before this COVID, we're going to come out of this stronger than ever. And I feel great about it.
Awesome.
So what was all right?
Well, I'm wondering. We'll see as we go, but I'm wondering if now like numbers 2 through 5 are just like I say what they said, and then the answer is, well, none of this would matter if you just focused on.
That's probably going to be the answer. Yeah.
So we'll see.
Well, so I've disagreed with the first one. I like that.
Sort of disagreed.
I totally disagreed with the first one.
Well, with the part about 20 pounds, but like the idea of not beating yourself up over a loss, that's only sort of, you're kind of having to massage that to call that agreeing, I guess.
I'm not agreeing with them. Yeah,
Okay.
when they're coming up with these formulas. Yeah. I feel like I'm thinking of that scene with the Godfather and who's the nightclub singer, and he starts crying to the Godfather, and he goes, "What can I do, Godfather?" And he goes, "You can act like a man," and he slaps him in the face. Yeah,
right. That was the role. It was supposed to be Frank Sinatra, and Frank Sinatra was like, "I'm not going to do that."
Good for him.
And then
I'm glad he did it. Yeah.
Although later he was like, "I could have been in the Godfather. That would have been."
Yeah.
He's got enough fame anyway. So number 2.
Yeah.
They call it pass the guard, but they're just being clever. It doesn't mean pass the guard, like actually pass the guard in jiu-jitsu. It means like pass down to the next generation. And I think it's an ego thing where they're saying so it's picturing.
So this is so you can make it to age 95.
Yes.
So the first one was come up with this ridiculous calculus.
Well, wait till.
So I'm saying throw that out.
Well,
so this one is saying pass it down. Okay.
Yeah. What it means is sooner or later. See, you're not a good example of this because you keep doing so well. But like, sooner or later, people will pass you as you get older. Like sooner or later, you have to deal with it.
Have to.
Like you've extended it very long, but it's like whether your students or your son or whoever it is will eventually.
Yeah, they
pass
should.
You.
Yeah, I want them to. All of them. Yeah,
right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's their point. They're like. They said that's probably the number one reason people quit is someone passing them. So there's one of like your son or your student, but there's also just like the people around you passing you.
Yeah.
And they're saying this is the main source of frustration in a jiu-jitsu gym, that people that you used to beat are now beating you.
Yeah.
And if you think about the course, like everyone comes into a jiu-jitsu gym and gets beat up. Then they then they start winning and they win more and more and more. Then they often get to a level where they're usually winning. Like if they stay for years and years, they get their black belt, they can beat most of the students. And they're saying eventually you get older and older, and then
your performance deteriorates.
They were comparing it to doing a marathon, where it's like
your time
first one. At first, you're just happy to finish. Then you're like, I'm doing better, and I'm doing better, and I'm doing better, and then eventually it will start going back down. And like,
Dan, it's so funny. I saw a story the other day on social media. This guy ran a 2:30 marathon. I think he was like 64 years old. It's freaking crazy, isn't it?
Just people.
They showed a picture of the guy. He didn't look like he could do a 2:30 marathon either.
Was he wearing like a sweater and like khakis?
He just looked a little stocky. You know, he wasn't like this old Kenyan guy. He was like he looked like a Scottish guy, and I'm like, really? He did 2:30. Wow, amazing.
I remember there was I read some story about the beginning of the ultra marathons, like the 100-mile races, and who knows how much this is true. It was said as 100% true, but I never verified it. But that the very first, like, there was a couple near the beginning of ultra marathons. Apparently, some guy showed up that was like a sheep herder.
Oh,
and he was like,
from where? Do we know?
Australia, New Zealand, one of those places. Yeah. And he showed up in like not running gear, like, he's like, these are the shoes I wear. And he was sort of like he said something.
Jeans?
Yeah, boots and jeans. And he was like, well, I chased the sheep for days. And everyone assumed he meant like he spends days running or days running around. And he meant like days nonstop chasing, like for 96 solid hours he chased the sheep. And apparently he was the first one, like the ultra marathon, they would like run a certain distance and then like rest or even nap,
just kept going, right?
And he just never stopped. Yeah. And they were like, wait, you so they'd get ahead of him. And then they
would do a marathon.
They'd be like,
I'm
going to do a half-hour sleep or something, or whatever it was. And it was sort of like, wait, you can just keep going. This guy, I love the image of the guy in his ripped jeans, and flannel shirt or something, hat, maybe a pipe.
Shepherd's crook.
Yeah. And they're just
you don't have to carry that crook. Oh, I'm used to it.
Yeah. Like, is he smoking? But like, and then a little flask. But then, so then they were like, oh, wait, we all have to do them 100 miles in a row. Who knows how much that's true? I thought it was a funny story. But anyway, so back to jiu-jitsu. People will pass you, and you should just adjust your expectations. And one thing they said you should do, which everyone I know that is accomplished in your gym does this, which is allowing like sometimes you allow people to pass or you allow certain things to happen, like white belts. And they were saying some people never ever allow anything to happen to them, so when it starts happening, it starts upsetting them. They were like, they're so unused to getting passed, or they've never been passed.
Here's the deal, Dan. Some of our training we do, and this is the best way to train, is positional. So we'll do a round where you're on the bottom of a mount, and you got to find your way out. And because what could happen is, like you said, you never get mounted for 7 years, and then one day somebody mounts you, and you're like, how the hell do I get out of this thing?
Yeah,
and it wouldn't be good. But
that happened. I think we might have even mentioned that there was someone. He was a really good jiu-jitsu up-and-comer in the UFC, who I can never remember his name. I think he's in California, but he fought, was it Matt Linland? Someone like that. And it was like he shot in and he just got guillotined.
Oh.
And it was like a standing guillotine.
Oh,
and
right.
He didn't have a good defense, and he just tapped. And I remember talking with, I think it was Kenny Florian at the time, saying he seemed to have no defense. He didn't know what to do and what Kenny was saying was like he probably hadn't been standing guillotined in 7 years. You know what I mean? Like he just hadn't been like.
Well, there was a recent grappling match, Dan, where Gordan Ryan competed against Mateus Denise. So they're both ADCC champions. And Gordan at one point got the mount. And it seemed like Mateus hadn't been mounted in 10 years.
Maybe he hadn't.
Yeah. And it took him, I don't want to exaggerate, but my memory is it took 6 minutes to get out. And it took a lot of energy out of him. Where I think if like every other day you were doing a round where you were mounted, you'd probably be more efficient at getting out. I don't know. But I'm sure getting out of Gordan Ryan's mount it would probably take me 6 months, never mind 6 minutes. But that's why that positional training is important. And this thing about people are going to pass you, fine. But here's the other thing, Dan. If you're focusing on your development, here's what I say. I tell guys, you're here to develop yourself. You're here to develop your teammates. So I'm also thinking about developing my teammates. So, of course, they're going to pass me because I'm helping them develop themselves. And the other thing I found is when you're competing out at these tournaments, you're competing with other teams. What happens, Dan, is you're not competing with your teammates so much. If nobody's ever going out in the world and competing, if you have an academy where nobody goes to a tournament, guess who you're competing with? Each other. And it's just natural. And, you want to spar hard and everything, and you're kind of competing with each other. Like my son, he wants to choke me and pass my guard in the worst way, and I do him too. But it's different. We're really not, we're always helping each other.
Yeah, it's
always
not hostile.
not at all. And he figures something out. He shows me. I figure something out that I think could be useful for him. I give it to him, and you just have a different spirit. And when you're coming from that point, I don't care. Yeah, I'm not worried about people getting better than me at all. And as an instructor, I've seen it where instructors do not want their students to get better than them, and it's a disaster. It's awful. It's just an abomination. I heard one guy actually say it. He goes, "I would never want one of my students to be better than me." And oddly enough, he was a horrifically bad instructor. Yeah, and I'm like, "Well, you're succeeding."
Yeah.
Yeah, I want as many of my students as possible to be better than me.
No,
you know? Yeah.
I remember.
I don't even think about it better because then, it's kind of like a monkey's paw thing. Like if you wish something, you have a goal, you might get there in a really odd way. If I want all my students to be better than me, maybe I'll just end up sucking so they're better than me. If I don't want them to be better than me, maybe I'll just keep them being terrible. You know what I mean?
The extension of not wanting. Exactly. I used to joke about that. Like, let's tell the white belts all the wrong things.
Yeah.
So then they can't get. Then we can.
Yeah, and there
keep
used to
beating
be a rumor of that you would go some places and they wouldn't teach you everything. They were like hiding their knowledge. So we don't do that at all in my academy. My idea is, it's like the tide. If we elevate everybody in the room, then you're going to have to you will get better yourself. You know what I mean? Like if I keep getting all these guys better, guess what? I'm going to get better too. And if that's what we're focused on, all of us getting better, I don't really care if I'm 10th in the room or 20th or 50th in the room. It doesn't matter as long as we're all getting better.
And it will be contagious. If you're helping people all the time, they'll naturally start
That's
helping you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They'll be like, he's always helped me. And if they do get better than you, then you've got someone better than you helping you for the rest of your career.
And it's back to what I was talking about in one of those previous episodes. If one of our goals is to improve the ecosystem, that answers that. And then the ecosystem is what matters. It's not like that somebody's passing me or not. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I wouldn't say I disagree with it, but I still think whoever's presenting that issue is focusing on the wrong stuff.
Right. And I will say, number 3 sounds to me exactly like 2, with just a different word.
Right.
They said acknowledge your ego, which is sort of the
Which
same.
is nonsensical gobbledygook. What does that mean?
It's saying, it's the idea, the same idea, like don't get upset if people get better than you. If people pass you, don't get upset about it. Like to acknowledge that.
Well, I'll say it's human nature to be hyper concerned with status.
Right.
And so I don't like when people use the word ego because they don't define what they actually mean.
Right.
And it sounds like buzzwords.
One thing they said just off the cuff, like it wasn't a major point. They just sort of said it in the middle of talking, but that resonated with me. Was what are you in this for? Or like, what are you doing this for?
Yeah. What are you? And what's the answer to that?
To develop.
Bingo.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
So they never quite answered that question.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They didn't say
Yeah.
the answer is to develop.
And you know what? Some people come in, Dan, and they go, well, I'm here to get in shape. Well, guess what? The best way for you to get in shape is to develop yourself. Focus on developing yourself when here. Well, I'm here to have a good time. Well, if you develop yourself, you're going to have way more good days than bad days. Well, I'm here for the fellowship to get along with people. Yeah, then help them develop themselves and develop yourself too. I mean, it's the answer for everything.
Right. Just move on?
Yeah, let's go, man.
More. 4, respect. See, this is when I started thinking all the points of the same point. But 4, respect the roller coaster. You can picture what that means is that understand that your journey is not going to go better. Like you're going to have ups and downs. And things are going to happen like injuries, like having kids, like a pandemic.
Yeah.
Like, that are just going to interfere.
Right. There's a time for everything, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And their point, and I agree with this, is that a lot of people will get an injury, say, and never come back.
Yeah.
And the real reason they never came back isn't the injury.
Yeah.
Or people will say, I moved jobs and that's why they never came back. But the real reason is usually something else, right? Like the real reason
What do you think it is, Dan? I know what it is. I think you know what it is.
Some version of your ego's bruised.
Well, you don't want to come back, and now Dan's better than me, and I was a little bit better than Dan when I left. Yeah, because they're concerned with status. It's
always
one of
the same answer, right?
Well, that's the theme I'm having this year, Dan, is I want to not fear losing status. That's what I'm, and it's against human nature. But
it's almost like a self-focus too. It's almost like, in a way, be self-centered in a way. Like, like I'm here to develop, because in part
self-centered in the best way.
Right. Self-centered sounds like a negative thing, but I mean in a good way. But it also helps when you're like, it helps you not feel bad about so-and-so beat me. If you're like, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm not thinking about, did that person beat me? I'm thinking about, how do I get better? I'm not really thinking about, does everyone think I shouldn't have got this blue belt? It's like, I don't care if everyone thinks I should have got this blue belt or not. That's not what my focus is on. You know what I mean?
Exactly, Dan. Yeah. We got one more?
One more. Well, yeah, but and this last one is a little Gracie-ish. It said, follow the leader. And I think what they meant was Helio Gracie. I think they mean Helio, who actually rolled till he was 95. And so I almost think it was just one of those, like,
so what is the
respect
point?
They were saying that he practiced what he preaches. And they gave an example of this. Like they said, so everyone goes, he rolled till 95. And it's like, well, how much can you really roll when you're 90 years old?
Okay.
And what they said he would do is, he'd have a young guy and he'd say, mount me or something and try to tap me out.
Yeah.
And he would defend, and he couldn't really get out, but maybe the kid couldn't tap him. Yeah. And he'd be like, that's my victory.
Yeah.
I just wanted to see if I could defend, and I still could defend. I couldn't, flip him over and take mount. And, I couldn't. Helio, as a young guy, would be like, I'll fight for 40 minutes, and I'll challenge all of Brazil, and I'll challenge people on the beach. Like, that went away.
It's a good point. So, Dan, maybe development at some point, at very advanced age, is you're just losing less ability than you would otherwise.
Right.
You might be just slowing the degradation of your skills, which is also noble, because you're deliberately trying to develop yourself. And here's the other thing I will say about this follow the leader. I like that is, a lot of what we can do in age is based on our perceptions and our beliefs. It's, oh, geez, I'm a certain age, I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I mean, there's plenty of people, Dan, that'll be saying, Dan, at your age, you shouldn't be doing that. What are you doing that at your age for?
I think they were saying that from when I started.
Exactly. So if you don't listen to that and follow the leader, just say, I'm going to do what I can do as long as I can do it. That's the way to approach it for sure. Yeah, I want to be doing this as long as possible. And a lot of it is your preconceptions, what you think you can do. And
it's almost related to the first point where, so if, say your skills degrade a little bit from age, do you then want to say, well, I'm throwing in the towel? So I'm relating it to when I said, it's sort of like, well, you might still not be able to beat up that 25-year-old offensive lineman. It's like, well, how would I do without jiu-jitsu? And so I feel the same way. It's sort of like, if you degrade a little bit, it's like, well, how will I do if I quit? Compared to, it's like, well, I don't like that I'm degrading slowly. It's like, well, if you stop totally, you're going to degrade a lot faster.
Here's the other thing too, Dan, is you could still be developing your sort of psychological mental skills as well, like your tolerance for discomfort and so forth, where maybe I'm not as fast as I used to be, or strong, or as quick, or as agile, or as coordinated, but I'm not getting as stressed out. I'm dealing with the stress in a better way. So there's a lot of different places you could be developing yourself if you think about it. And like we're saying, worst case scenario, you're not developing at all, but you're slowing the degradation of your skills through deliberate application of yourself when you come to training. That definitely has value, and it's worth doing, I think, as well.
Yeah. That's all 5 things, John.
That's all 5.
5 rules to roll till 95. So what's your summary? There's a key, I would say, there's some truth in the overall theme of, like, don't let your ego make you quit jiu-jitsu, right? Like, don't beat yourself up. But what you're saying is they're coming at it from the wrong angle.
That's what I think. I would say focus on development of yourself, focus on development of your teammates, focus on the development of the academy, the ecosystem. Don't let other people set limits for you as far as age is concerned. And, I think if you do that, everything else will fall into place.
That will automatically, then you will not be you will not be in the ego trap.
Yeah. You won't be focusing on status and losing status and all that other baloney. It doesn't really apply. And, I mentioned the other thing, that when your team is competing out in the greater jiu-jitsu community, it allows you to focus more on your teammates and help them and help the ecosystem. You don't feel like you got to win these battles in your academy at practice. If you come into practice to win, to get some kind of conceptual trophy for yourself, that's not the way to approach it, for sure. Well, I think that was pretty good, Dan. I think our listeners will like that. Awesome.
And it's really the point you're trying to hammer home. I think we hammered it home today.
Yeah.
The point, the idea of what you should be focusing on.
I think you could theoretically, Dan, go to jiu-jitsu tournaments, compete, right? And if you're focused on developing yourself, you could lose every match. You start as a white belt, have 100 matches. You could lose the first 100 matches of your career, but you were deliberately and systematically focused on developing yourself, you'd get really good. You know what I mean? So, I'm sure that would never really happen. Like, you'd probably start winning way before that. But, yeah, just focus on developing yourself. Don't worry about anything else. That answers everything for you.
Right. Or if there's someone who's thinking, I'm just not athletic enough or young enough or strong enough or whatever to ever get really, really elite level.
Mm-hmm.
Again, this answers that. You're just trying to develop yourself. Like,
you could get better than you are right now.
Yeah.
That's for goddamn sure, right?
Yeah. You shouldn't even be eyeing that elite level. You're just sort of...
Don't worry about that. Yeah. Just get 1% better and keep doing that. Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, thanks everyone for listening. Please like this, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and share it. Tell your friends about it. And we'll talk to you next week. Take care.